stream. We have like 5 different platforms that we stream on: Facebook, YouTube, my Twitter account. That's probably where most people are probably viewing this right now, since we're live. But if you haven't seen this before, this is the Educational Freedom Institute podcast, and we do allow comments to pop up at the bottom of the screen. So if you have any questions for our 2 special guests today, Kevin Nicholson and Chris Lawrence, I will say this is the first time we have 4 people on one Educational Freedom Institute podcast at once. So we have a group or a party of school choice individuals to talk about the topic. So this should be a lot of fun today. And just for the listeners, one of our guests was actually at a school choice roundtable. That's Chris Lawrence, was at a school choice roundtable that just happened a couple weeks ago in Wisconsin with the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, and some other people were there. I think Betsy DeVos was at that conversation as well. So I think listeners will be interested to hear how, the background on that story and your experience with that, Chris. But I will just point out for the listeners again, if you do have any comments, we can show them at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be able to look at any of your commentary, and we can directly respond to your questions there as well if you have any for our special guest. But without further ado, I think we have a good amount of people hopped onto the live stream already. Matthew, you want to hit us up with some formal introductions?
Yeah, let's go for it. So I'm Matthew Nielsen. I'm the founder and board chair at the Educational Freedom Institute. I'm joined, as always, by Corey DeAngelis, the executive director at EFI. He's also an adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute and director of school choice at the Reason Foundation. Really quickly, before I get to our guests, that's the first time that I've said Corey's introduction without referring to my notes. So
hey,
it only took me,
you know who I am now.
it only took me 23 episodes to get to this point. So, but anyway, where we are joined today by 2 special guests, Kevin Nicholson and Chris Lawrence. Both of them are with No Better Friend Corporation.
We say Corps like the Marine Corps, but
I like it.
I hold that against you at all.
I'll drop the P just for you. Okay, so Kevin Nicholson is the president and founder of No Better Friend Corps. He was a candidate for the U.S. Senate in Wisconsin in 2018 and a U.S. Marine Corps veteran with an S on the end this time. And then Chris Lawrence is the parent of 3 school choice children, a conservative activist, and program director at No Better Friend Corps. So welcome, guys. Thanks for jumping on with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, our pleasure. So we always start off with the same question for our guests, just to give everyone a little bit of context and background. So we'll ask you guys, both of you, to answer the same question, if you would. If you'll just tell us a little bit more about yourselves and why you are interested in education in particular. We're on the EFI Educational Freedom Institute podcast. We know you guys do much more than that with your organization, but why education?
Chris, you want to start?
Yeah, so I'll start. So like anytime I'm asked this question, I always give you, I'm the 3 Ps. I'm a parent of 3 school choice children. I have a 14, a 12-year-old, and a 10-year-old who attends a choice school here in Milwaukee, here in the inner city of Milwaukee. But I'm also a conservative activist, so I engage a lot in politics. So I'm an activist also for school choice, and that means talking to people on doors, just educating people what school choice is, how it works, and just getting them to come to our side. And here at No Better Friend Corp, I engage in a policy side of it, just educating people. Like I said, still educating people on policy at various events around the state, and in many different ways. So, like I said, it's the 3 Ps, parent, political, and the policy side of it. So I engage all aspects. So it's pretty unique.
Very cool. Awesome. So Kevin, tell us about yourself and why education.
Sure. And I don't know how much you know about my story, but it was a big deal in my Senate run that when I was about 20 years old, I was president of the College of Democrats of America. So about a lifetime ago. And I was raised in a family of Democrats, and you kind of grow up in that system and you get immersed in Democrat politics. And one of the greatest hypocrisies I saw in the Democrat Party that helped to send me on the way of leaving the Democrats and realizing I was a conservative was seeing the hypocrisy that came to be with education, right? There's no more important platform someone can have in their life. It doesn't make a difference what you look like or where you come from or anything like it than having a good education to start off, a culture that embraces you and says, we're going to put you on a direction and a trajectory for success. And when you saw the way the Democrats treated education, which was more or less like a cash cow, which could allow them to fund through teacher unions. And I'm not cascading teachers here, but teacher unions that funded Democrat campaigns. You came to realize real quick, there's a lot of hypocrisy here and not many results that are actually helping kids that are in disadvantaged communities. And so I brought this up in my Senate campaign as being one of the most important things we can do to help kids that most need the help, with the argument that kids don't have time to wait for politicians to fix broken schools. And they don't, because 2 to 3 years in a kid's education can set them behind for the rest of their lives. And so what school choice does is it allows an escape valve for kids and their families to get into better platforms when they need it most, which is basically immediately. And no, I don't make the argument, our group doesn't make the argument this is the only educational choice. It's part of a bigger suite of options and solutions that need to be put forward. But boy, if you get down to communities where kids are most disadvantaged, this allows them the opportunity right now to get to a better platform. That's why it's so critical to our group to advance this policy solution.
I'm glad you brought up school choice hypocrisy, because this is one of the main initiatives at the Educational Freedom Institute. I had to bring it up on the sidebar.
I like that.
I mean, there's a lot of politicians who exercise school choice for their own families. And, one of the biggest ones that comes to mind for most people is Elizabeth Warren, because she was caught lying about it on camera during the presidential run. Joe Biden as well. They sent their children to private schools, or at least one of their children. And then they fight really hard to stop others from having that opportunity. Joe Biden voted against the DC voucher program, which is targeted to very disadvantaged communities. And I think Will Flanders was saying on a radio interview a couple of months ago that someone in Wisconsin was, pushing for a bill to end their voucher program. And I want to ask you guys a little bit about the school choice scenario in Wisconsin, because I think that's a big deal. But this guy attended private schools himself and admitted that, but then fights against it for others. Just doesn't make any sense. So I'm glad you brought that up. But could you guys, give us a little bit of background on two things? One, No Better Friend Corp. What's your kind of vision for how No Better Friend Corp I keep putting a P on it. But what's your vision for how that institution is going to influence school choice, or what kind of things you guys are doing? And then also, if you could just give us a background on school choice in Wisconsin, and particularly in Milwaukee, because to a lot of people, they see Milwaukee as kind of the first longest standing modern day voucher program, at least in the United States.
Absolutely. Well, I'll talk about a bit about No Better Friend Corps and our initiatives, and I'll flip it to you and talk a bit about some of what we're seeing in Milwaukee. So I'll start by saying just recently, National School Choice Week this year in January, we partnered with a number of great groups in Wisconsin, including Hispanics for School Choice, School Choice Wisconsin, AFP, American Federation for Children, and some others, basically to get about 1,000 kids to the state capitol to celebrate their success in school choice programs, and basically call the legislators to account, and governor as well, too, to say these programs are working. And the governor, true to form, actually left the building and disappeared for the day, which was crazy. A politician running away from a bunch of kids happy about school. And meanwhile, the Republican legislators that have supported these programs were there in force. The vice president flew in, was there. Chris spoke. It was a wonderful event. Like, we had a ton of incredible support there, right? It was amazing. And meanwhile, the Democrats, after we were done, had the press conference that you're talking about right now, with state representatives getting up and saying, we need to end these programs, while these kids were still in the building, celebrating their success, their educational success. And then again, and I believe, yes, you're correct, one of them, Jonathan Brostoff, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, I do believe did go to private school himself. And here he is castigating programs that were giving kids the opportunity to get out of schools that aren't working for their families and to get ahead in life. Again, hypocrisy, sure, but it really does affect families here and now. And our job as No Better Friend is to get these stories out in front of the public and tell them, look, conservative policy solutions actually work. They really do put people in a better position to succeed. And if we don't tell these stories, no one's going to tell them for us, because we know people in the media aren't going to do it. They're following a party line. So
yeah, so I'll jump on. I'll just add into about that press conference. It was Jonathan Brossoff, and it was a state senator. His name Chris Lawrence, and he actually went to Thomas More High School here in Milwaukee, a very good high school. And actually, it was so good. I was looking. It was actually the last high school. My daughter, she's going to high school, and so we're looking at a few high schools, and it came between the high school she's going to and Thomas More, a really, really good school. And he went there, and obviously he doesn't want to give my daughter the opportunity to go there, through the voucher system we have in Milwaukee. So to touch on Milwaukee, we got a very, as you know, Corey, we got a very robust program, here in Milwaukee. I believe it's over 30,000 kids. Don't quote me on that, but it's a pretty robust program. It's so robust, anytime you expand choice, more parents flock to it. And, I've always said, a lot of people, who are anti-choice advocates, they always talk about funding. They always talk about, legislators to support it, but they never ask the parents, why are you making this decision to not attend a district school or your neighborhood school and to attend a choice school? So much so I never got that question from opponents. They never asked me, hey, why did you choose to send your kids to a choice school? And if they did, I would tell them, listen, I want a much better option for my child. I want a much better education. I went to the district schools in Milwaukee, and candidly, it just wasn't a great fit in terms of, the quality, the lessons plan, and also the control I have over the education. And so in Milwaukee, we got Corey, we got a robust program, a lot of, more choice. There's parents who want more choice. And that's one thing I feel bad about is the parents, who don't have, because we got the lottery system and not everybody get that choice voucher and able to find their school. And some of them are really stuck in the district schools and they don't want their kids there. So like I said, the more choice we have, the better. I'm glad we got a lot of them in Milwaukee. I'm privileged to be one of those parents to have 3 children in a choice school. I just want that choice for all students.
Yeah, thanks for that background. I mean, This Milwaukee program has been researched extensively. It's probably one of the biggest researched school choice programs in the United States. It started in 1990. It's been around for 3 decades now. 30 years that people have been researching this, and I think most of the evidence has been positive. Positive effects on test scores. We have 2 random assignment studies on this. One by Jay Green, another one by Rouse, published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics. But then also, even if you're looking at the results for the kids who are left behind or who don't have the opportunity to leave the traditional public schools, their scores get better as well because of competition. And I think Mike Pence said this at your school choice roundtable, Chris, that you attended, when he said, something along the lines that, competition makes everybody better. Oh, here's the clip. He says, competition makes everybody better. We've seen evidence of that here in Wisconsin. And I think what he was looking at was he cited, if he had seen these studies, there's 5 studies on this in Milwaukee. They all find positive effects as far as competition goes on the children who don't even use the school choice programs. And then there's just a lot of other studies that have seen reductions in crime. I just have to point that out because that's the study that I did. But then also increases in graduation rates as well. But Chris, so let's talk a little bit about that, the school choice roundtables, because I'm personally just super interested in how this kind of came about and your experience with this. You have School Choice Wisconsin here in the background. So yeah, Chris, in particular, could you give us kind of a background on this and maybe just your thoughts on the whole discussion?
Yeah. So, because of a lot of the work I do, just being a school, everybody, here in Milwaukee knows I'm a school choice parent. I'm very active in a political movement here, just fighting for choice and just in the conservative movement in general. So I was referred to sit on this panel with Vice President Pence. It was an honor. And we had Secretary DeVos there too. And actually it was my second panel with Secretary DeVos, because she visited my kid's school just months prior. And I got to sit on that panel too, alongside my daughter, who's now going to high school. She's leaving the choice school she was at previously. So yeah, no, it was an opportunity to sit, on a panel with the Vice President. And largely we were discussing how students are going to come back post-COVID, just to get our thoughts of how as parents we dealt with, our kids being told, hey, you can't go back to school. Everything's going to go to virtual learning, which was great from our perspective at St. Marcus, because I can tell you nothing really changed. A lot changed with me because I was home a lot more. I was home a lot more homeschooling, but I can tell you the curriculum was just as rigorous. The teachers were just as much in contact. In fact, they're always been in contact, but it almost doubled. So I was hearing from the teachers, various times throughout the day, because we were just really starting to get used to the programming. So we talked about that at the at the roundtable of how was it for parents and educators, during this period of COVID, and what it's going to be like for us going back, and what sort of how we perceive the future going back. Are we do we want our kids to go back in school? And at our school, there's I believe we did a survey. About 7 to 8 out of 10 parents want to go back into the classroom. They're very eager, and that's not surprising. I mean, we stay in Milwaukee. We still have high poverty in Milwaukee. A lot of people are, we're all working class, got jobs. People need to get back to work, and their kids are very eager to get back to school. And so we talked about that with the vice president. It was a really great program, and we got our message out. And I told the vice president of why choice is important to me. For the various reasons, you get a lot more power as a parent, when you have that choice to send your kid to whatever school you want. It's a lot of power.
Hey, but Chris, a lot of people who don't like school choice will come back at you and say, private schools are unaccountable because they don't have political, mechanisms for accountability through the voting booth or through school boards. What is your response to that as a parent?
I tell them exactly this. I'm the accountability. I'm the parent, because if I don't like the quality, if I don't think my children are getting a great education, if I don't think it's a safe environment to send them, I pull them out. And that's one less student in their school. That's the greatest accountability. It's just like me going to any restaurant. If I go to this restaurant here, and I say, the quality here is just not good, I'm not coming back. That's the same thing that works with a school. That's the power of the choice program. If I don't like the program, I leave, or I go to another school. But I like it, so I stay. And so, I always say I'm the accountability, and that's the accountability you do not get in the district schools. That's the accountability my mother didn't have, because I didn't have choice. Growing up, I had to go to the district school, and so the accountability was through bureaucrats in the school board. Now I am, I can act as a school, but I can just move my children out. And so it's a lot of power. And I tell them I'm the accountability. And I tell them it's a lot of power when you have, when you have that choice voucher, because you can take it anywhere you want at any time.
I like that. That's right there, Corey. That's like a T-shirt, isn't it? I am the accountability.
Boom. I am the school board. I love it.
That's a bit of the market response that you're talking about, with seeing scores improve in non-choice programs as well, too, right? Because at the end of the day, different players in the market, whether the traditional public schools or other choice schools, are aware that they have to perform in order to retain students, and with that comes funding. And so, Chris being able to make rational decisions, just like countless other parents, really does affect people, just like it affects any market out there, and that's real, and it actually has that effect.
So what do you guys say? So there was a New Hampshire senator, I'm trying to look it up on the fly right here, but along this line of reasoning, where at one point they'll say, the private schools just aren't accountable, but when you respond like that, sometimes they'll say, oh, well, choice is great for educated parents, but right. But some parents they're just not expert educators, so they might not make the best decisions, and so that it might not lead to true accountability. What's kind of your response to this line of reasoning?
Oh, you go first.
Well, yeah. So it's almost insulting, because we're parents, so we're raising our children, and we know our children well. Until they're just years before they even start school. So we got a good idea of who our children are. So it's almost insulting and demeaning, because I know what my children, who my children are, and I know what's best for them. Obviously, nothing's perfect, but when you're looking for a school, it's your child. You take this stuff serious. They have a short childhood. They turn 4, they get into K4, and they got 14 years. And it sounds like a lot, but it's really a short amount of time. As a parent, you really, really are. Everybody wants what's best for their child generally. And parents, we're very tough, especially when we have the power of choosing our kids' school. We're very tough, and we're looking at everything. We're asking every question, and most parents know what's best for their kids. They know how they're going to put their kids in the best situation possible to be the most safest, to get the best education, and to get something that ideally fits them. And so I don't buy it. Parents are much smarter than a 9 people who sit on the school board, or the bureaucrats, administrative bureaucrats who decide in other places where you go to school and where you don't. And so.
And I would just say there is policymaker oversight too, because at the end of the day, you want to talk about accountability, right? Like we can run through math, English, reading, ACT scores, graduation rates, where these schools are outperforming similar schools in similar neighborhoods. That's actual accountability, and policymakers have to respond to that. So at the end of the day, when these schools actually are producing better metrics on top of simple anecdotal evidence of parents say this is working better for my family, that matters. So too does all the metrics that we can look at. Mm-hmm. And so policymakers are on the hook for that. Like they're funding these programs, and yes, they are accountable to the actual production. So there's plenty of accountability here. Everybody's seeing it. What we're seeing, in fact, is the exact opposite. When the numbers come out the way they are, showing schools and choice programs in Wisconsin outperforming traditional public schools in similar neighborhoods, many are not willing to talk about that, or try to hush it or pretend it's not happening.
Well, and they do it with less money too in Wisconsin. The voucher program, I think they get a lot less, maybe half the amount of resources that the district schools get.
Yeah. At our school, we get about a $7,800 voucher. A counterpart at the public schools get about $15,000 when you include all the federal funding, when you include all funding sources.
So it is, right about half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, the fact is, and yes, there's ability for local municipalities to supplement state and federal allocations and so on and so forth. But when you look at the money that's coming from the state, yes, it's about half. And yet you see these results, which are traditionally, again, and I want to make it clear, this is apples to apples, drilling down into neighborhoods and saying, here is a school in the choice program that is producing better results with the same population of a neighborhood school that's right nearby. That's what's most remarkable, and why we say this is so important to getting kids access like today, not next week or 2 years from now, but today.
So I don't know if you guys have seen the Random Assignment podcast that I do with Bob Bowden. He's at Choice Media TV. But we talked a few weeks ago about some of the reopening of schools in Milwaukee, and during the lockdown, a lot of Milwaukee schools just weren't cutting it. They weren't figuring it out. And there's a lot of news stories on this that we were talking about. So I want to get y'all's take on something that DeVos just said yesterday morning on Fox News. I think she did 2 interviews yesterday. One with CNN, and then a little later, like an hour later, she did one with Fox. But she said something that I thought was pretty interesting. I'm not sure if you saw this tweet yet, but she said if schools aren't going to reopen, they shouldn't get the funds. Give it to the families to decide. What do you guys think about what's going on with the federal proposals, and maybe just your take on this quote even, and what are your thoughts with what the administration has been kind of proposing on the school choice front?
Well, let's start big picture first, right? And then we look at what's happening in the world today with the amount of turmoil and everything that we've seen, and the amount of schools that have been shut down for extended periods now. School systems talking about being shut down well into next year. And let's ask ourselves a reasonable question. Who do we think is going to be most negatively impacted by schools being closed for long and extended periods of time? Almost undoubtedly and unequivocally, and by any measure of logic, that's going to be kids that are already in the most disadvantaged situations, whose families aren't necessarily in a position to provide them the educational framework they need to be successful. So I think that's logical. I don't know who can really make an argument against that, but let's again, big picture, right? What Secretary DeVos is saying is, okay, so if the schools are going to make a decision not to open up, then we should track resources to families and to kids so they can make rational decisions as to what will keep them in the best position to move forward at the right trajectory. Here again, asking the American people, right? Like, how is that not reasonable? Like, how, if a school is saying that we're not going to be open, we're not necessarily going to provide the right educational framework for an individual given family, what she's saying is, let's get those resources to families so they can make rational decisions, because we are in volatile, difficult, and challenging times. And our political leadership at so many different levels of government have shown that they are either incapable or unwilling to handle this adroitly. So we can give resources to families. We can let them make rational decisions. And some of that might include school choice programs. It might involve supplementing homeschooling or whatever the case might be. But again, let's be honest. It's the kids in most disadvantaged situations that are going to be most negatively impacted by long-term school closings. So let's be innovative. Let's be smart. Let's track resources to the places that families can actually create solutions that work for them. How that's a negative thing, I don't know, unless you are, again, not a teacher, but a teachers union bureaucrat who sees this as a threat to your funding stream.
Yeah, the way that I try to put it out in tweet form was, the analogy I like to use is food stamps, and I'm sure you guys have seen this. I did so on your podcast at No Better Friend Corps. But if a Walmart in my neighborhood doesn't reopen, I don't worry too much about that because I could take my food stamps to another Walmart or a Trader Joe's or Harris Teeter or Whole Foods even. But with the school system, if my school doesn't open, they still get my funding. So I think what DeVos is saying is you can still take your funds to the public school that if they're doing some type of virtual education, you like that and that's working for you, or if they reopen and you like whatever scenario or situation that they put together. But if not, you should be able to walk and you should be able to take your, universal basic education income or, education stamps or whatever you want to call them somewhere else. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
Well, especially in a moment where in American public life, and again, our mandate, No Better Friend Corps, we cover more than just education. It's one of our policy pillars, but you're seeing so many extreme, volatile, and bizarre policy suggestions in response to problems that don't really solve these problems. Here is a solution that actually does solve the problem. And to your point, different families are going to make different decisions in amongst volatile circumstances. Why would we not add a degree of innovation here to say that, yes, you can then take the resources, put it to what works best for your kid? Because we can't afford to have millions of kids falling 2 years behind in their education and expect that there's not going to be long-term negative ramifications for that.
I like how you point out that not having options is most likely to negatively impact the least advantaged the most. And I think that's something that most people miss, because if you think about it, if your school doesn't reopen and you're an advantaged person and you have a lot of money to pay out of pocket for a private school that opens full time, you're not, you can still get by, right? You can still go to work. Or if you want to do homeschooling or microschooling, you can afford to send your child to another home, or, if you can rely on one income for a while, then you'll be fine, essentially. If you can afford the cost of homeschooling, but without school choice, you're kind of stuck, especially if you're the least advantaged members of society. So I want to talk a little bit and move the conversation towards what you guys think about school choice as kind of an equalizer, because I mean it's no secret that the traditional school system has failed to close achievement gaps over time and just hasn't provide equal opportunities for educations to too many populations of students. So what are your thoughts on school choice as a mechanism of closing achievement gaps or providing more equalization?
You want to go first?
Well, yeah. So, as we was talking about before, we had the Senator Chris Lawrence, who came from a family of wealth where they can afford private school. I just don't come from that. We don't come from that. I can't afford to put 3 kids in school and just pay out of pocket, And so, but I also want to, at the same time, I want to give myself, I want to give my kids the same type of education he got. And so, like I said, our school choice system here in Milwaukee gives us that opportunity. It closes that gap. You get some of the same opportunities he got, especially coming from the inner city Milwaukee, where we come from. We don't, like I said, we come from some of the most, we have a very poor city. Excuse me, not a poor city, but we come from a relatively property poor district. And there's not great schools around. Just not many great schools to choose from. There's a few, but if you don't get into them, there's just not much opportunity. So the choice system, like I said, offers us that opportunity to go in schools like that, where, like I said, the Senator Chris Lawrence came from. And you just get it closes that gap. We get a lot more power as parents, and there's a lot of options.
Corey, what can you, sorry, Kevin, let me jump in real quick and then I'll let you go. But a question for Corey. So, Corey, what can you tell us about on the metrics? Give us some hard data on achievement gaps for kids that attend a choice school through the voucher system in Milwaukee versus the kids, like you already said that the kids that are left behind do better. do you have any off the top of your head stats you can throw out?
Well, I have the stats that school choice programs generally lead to better outcomes for students. And if you just look at the fact that school choice programs are targeted to the least advantaged students, either by income or being assigned to lower quality schools, if you take those two facts together, by definition, mathematically, that must lead to reductions in achievement gaps. So just looking at the data that school choice programs generally serve least advantaged students and then also provide positive effects overall, that generally leads to a reduction in achievement gaps. But then also, if you look at some analyses, the effects tend to be bigger and more positive for less advantaged populations as well. So I'm thinking of
which makes sense.
The DC voucher experiment, I believe, found this, for example. But and again, Kevin, before we get to your response in this, Chris brought up Chris Lawrence, so I got to bring this up as well. He had said something along the lines that he's a product of the public education system.
I remember this.
He graduated from a private school. So, okay, maybe you went to public schools for a couple of years, and on the very top of his website, both for Larson, he says, as a product of the public school system, he left out the fact that he graduated from a private school that accepts vouchers in Wisconsin. So I just wanted to point that out really quickly for the listeners. And he also pointed out, or he argued that the private school voucher program in Wisconsin is a failed experiment, but his school that he went to accepts students using that same program. So why would allowing students to go to his school be a failure? Doesn't make sense to me.
Not in his high school.
That's some super intense virtue signaling part of it's funny, like my kids actually all go to public school. Your kids all go to private school. I went to public school my whole life until graduate school. My graduate school is the first private school I set foot on. And the point is there are different things that work for families, right? There's different options. And I think what we're arguing for is not that everybody in the world should be attending a private school. It's realistically, there's not capacity to do that. But what we're saying is that certainly you need to provide an escape valve for kids that are in bad situations today to get them out. So that's baseline, right? But then what we're also saying is going beyond that, and I studied this in graduate school too, is that there is a market response to competition that exists in every market in the world that, yes, people see performance metrics and they know that they have to meet them, or potentially, yes, maybe certain schools should be closed down so that kids can move into other schools that perform better. So our argument is not that this is the answer no matter what for every family. Our argument is that in a situation critical scenario like education, you got to be flexible. You have to be innovative. You have to acknowledge metrics such that they exist and when you're presented with them. And if Chris Lawrence or whatever state legislator wants to say that they're going to close their ears, cover their eyes and whatnot, and pretend that things don't exist, then you get left behind in this debate because, we as people that care about our country and our communities and parents that are fully invested in the future of their children don't have time for people to lie to them, right? And their kids literally don't have time for someday someone to step in and fix a school system that's not working. Give them the outs now, create a market response that encourages better overall performance. And then, yes, let's talk long-term about what do we do to replicate the results we're seeing in these schools that are outperforming others? And let's get that into public school systems as well, too, so that traditional public schools see some of the same benefits.
Do you sense that you're making some headway there, Kevin and Chris, in Milwaukee? Are people coming around, waking up to the idea that, hey, yeah, maybe I do want a choice for my kids. Maybe it's not so bad that Chris sends his kids to a school of choice through the voucher system. How's that going?
Well, we're not doing so well on the elected official side. It used to be a time we had a lot more Democrats who supported the choice program. Unfortunately, it's about one or two that do, and a legislator. That it was actually the program was actually crafted by Democrats. Annette Polly Williams, if I got that name correct, and Howard Fuller. And they're both Democrats. Howard Fuller's
and Tommy Thompson.
Yeah,
he's going to call us if you don't say that.
And my good friend Tommy Thompson was a governor at that time, and he helped craft it. So this was it was a bipartisan plan. It was for Milwaukee, which was largely a blue city, a Democratic city. That Tommy Thompson won. I got to say that too.
Yes.
So, But I tell you, it's still popular with parents though, because we know this. Every time a school pops up, and or anytime like here, where my kids go to school, we're building a third school, and we know we're going to fill them seats up quickly. So it's still popular with parents. I think the one obstacle we got to start communicating to parents is how their kids go to school, because they see a private school pops up and they know they can pop up for this this voucher. But they quite don't understand the politics behind it. Who supports it? Who opposes it? So a lot of parents who send their kids to a choice school, they love it. Probably don't realize the Democratic representative they vote for hates it. And wants to the program. Tomorrow if they could.
So why do you think that has changed over time? I mean, to me, I've written a lot about how I don't think this should be a partisan issue at all. That the left and the right should be behind school choice as they were when this started in Milwaukee. That school choice leads to more equality. It benefits the least advantaged in society. It's a market mechanism. It gives families options. There's literally no argument that I can think of that should be explicitly left or right that should be against school choice. So what do you guys think about why that has played out this way over time?
Money, 100%. I mean, it's all there is to it. Campaign contributions coming from public sector unions, most notably in this case, teachers unions, going into Democratic coffers, which is why you saw such an enormous political fight in Wisconsin when Act 10 was passed, which basically just gave people the option of choosing not to join a public sector union. Now, they could still absolutely choose to join that public sector union, but they weren't forced to do so. Really what that fight was all 1,000% about was revenues into, and think about it this way. At one point, there was a pipeline that existed from my employer that went into my paycheck, was siphoned off to taxes, which went to the state government, which went to various public sector union employee salaries were funded by that. That was then siphoned off into union dues. This is all electronic, right? Like the money just flows from my employer, eventually siphoned off into union dues, into a union, and then paid out to the Democratic Party. And so there was a pipeline which went from local, like private sector employers into the party. And when that was threatened, they will do whatever they can, even if that means denying platforms for kids in disadvantaged communities that, again, give them that escape valve to get into better schools, if it means trying to protect a revenue source. But logically, you're correct. There's no reason beyond that money issue and campaign issue, that anybody should be arguing against a mechanism that gives kids access to better school, especially when it's done in a more affordable way than many traditional public schools. And so the last thing I'd say is, conservatives, what I think we need to do, and this is a big part of No Better Friends, like how do we position things? How do we make the argument? Not like split the difference, but say conservative ideas work. And I think one of the things that we have to do is get in front of people and say, look, call hypocrisy what it is, say that we're the ones that are out here fighting for kids to have the opportunities in life that they deserve. And not be shy about that, and then point out the fact that the Democrat establishment's tie to teachers unions is 100% based on money. It does not help teachers, and it certainly doesn't help kids.
Yeah, it's a good point that you pointed out a couple of times during the podcast, that being against teachers unions is not the same thing as being against teachers in general. Right. And a lot of the times, the things that the teachers unions push for are at odds with what would benefit teachers in general. You see Rebecca Friedrichs talked about that on Fox News earlier today, and she went up against the teachers unions in California and took it up to the Supreme Court in 2018, where she didn't like the politicizing that was going on with the teachers union. And look, if you look at Ben Scaffidy's data from 1992 to 2014, we've increased real education expenditures in the U.S. by 27%, but real teacher salaries have gone down by 2%. And I think that's a lot to do with they've been putting more bodies into the schools, but that doesn't raise teacher salaries. That increases union dues and political power, but that's about it. So let's transition a little bit to the presidential election coming up. Both candidates, main candidates, Donald Trump and Joe Biden have both used similar rhetoric on this idea that zip code shouldn't determine your future, but they've argued for two different policy prescriptions. Trump has said, zip code shouldn't determine your future, therefore we should allow you to escape that zip code assigned school and have school choice, where we've had Biden, on the other hand, saying zip code shouldn't determine your future. And what I mean by that is that we should just increase funding across the board using, tripling Title I funding and other avenues. So his argument is that, well, the zip code wouldn't determine your future if we just, threw more money into the system. So what are y'all's takes on these two different approaches, and which one do you think makes more sense?
Well, we know one is proven, Corey, and you've done studies on this. We know when we give parents more choice, that they get better results. And we also know by many studies, when you put more money into a system, doesn't mean you get better results. In fact, if you think about of all the spending, I don't know how much has grown since 1960. Even the last decades. Think about how much has grown. If all the spending we put, if spending really helped, there would be, I wouldn't be sending my kids to a choice school. I'd be sending them to the public school because everything will be perfect because we spent so much. Well above inflation, obviously. So it's
280% since 1960. 280% real terms.
And I believe everything has went down, as you can see from the scores. If I can't read the graph from here, but
test scores.
Those are test scores, and they have pretty much stagnant or gone down. So obviously we can tell the money has not pumping more money into the school system hasn't worked. But we do know choice works. So obviously President Trump, all the studies prove right. You don't even have to listen to President Trump to know that the studies show that when you get more choice, you get better results. And we know more money does not equal better results. And more money doesn't equal better results with even choice schools. It's all about the quality of school and how, just have an individualized education. And parents know what that is. And so, and like I said, they can make that choice.
And Chris is 100% right. It's one that's been proven both ways. It's been proven that just simply putting more money and allocating towards traditional public schools is not necessarily going to help kids in the most disadvantaged situations. And likewise, we are seeing, again, whether we're talking math, and this is largely, I'll attribute mostly, I know, Corey, you've done work on this too, but Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty has done plenty of studies on this, whether it's English, math, writing, ACT scores or graduation rates. We are in Wisconsin seeing better outcomes, quantifiable outcomes for kids, again, apples to apples, coming from the same neighborhoods. And so therefore, again, Joe Biden can talk a good game. What he's really doing is talking about allocating money to teachers unions that he knows darn well are going to funnel that money back to Democratic candidates, including himself. But if he's willing to just take a step back and think, okay, there you go, apples to apples. And that actually was not queued up perfectly, but yeah, that worked beautifully. Like, I wasn't thinking it worked beautifully. But no, there's no doubt that if he just takes a step back and says, okay, well, where do the numbers lead me, right? It is quite unequivocally obvious that if we're talking about kids, giving them the opportunity right now that they need, school choice programs make 100% sense.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been this Biden-Sanders quote unquote unity task force, and it was like 110 pages of proposals that they want, Biden to do. And, a couple of those things had to do with charter schools and private schools. One of them was they wanted him to get rid of the DC voucher program that's been around for, since 2004, which serves, disadvantaged groups of students here in the district. And another one was a lot of regulations for charter schools, to ban for-profit charter schools, and I think it was to allow the school districts to control enrollment at the charter schools, which is essentially like, having McDonald's block Burger King from having more customers, which doesn't make any sense. But what's most shocking to me from Biden is this video at a 2019 public education forum. I think it was in Philadelphia. Here's the clip, and I want to get y'all's response to this.
And so the point is, if I'm president, Betsy DeVos's whole notion from charter schools to this are gone.
What are your thoughts?
Short and sweet.
Well, I've always appreciated the honesty. At least I do appreciate that he's telling the truth of what he wants to do. I guess the goal is when I look at that, is we really got to, parents in charter schools have to hear that. They have to be taught that, because who all watched that? I didn't see that. I'm just saying that here now. I am aware where of his position. But, the parents in these schools and the kids, too, need to know, where Joe Biden stands on this. And and I'm glad you're doing this podcast. I'm glad you're doing this podcast to get the word out so more people can know and pass the word. Because I can tell you one thing, being at choice school, talking with other parents, a lot of them really don't understand just how the system works. And like I said, they vote for a lot of the same politicians who opposes that. I mean, it'd be a tough battle for me to support somebody who said, I don't support choice schools. I don't support you having the ability to choose where your kids go to school. So I think we just got to do more and more to communicate that to parents. And we just got to have real conversations. That's what we do here at No Better Friends. And, and we just got to reach more and more and more parents and just educate them on that. And I think we can sell it. Obviously, there are other issues, but most parents, especially if you got your kid in a charter school, probably really care about, what Joe Biden had to say there.
I mean, if you look at the Wall Street Journal article about the Florida governor's race, I mean, they chalk it up to school choice moms, they said, because they have over 100,000 low-income families using the Florida tax credit scholarship program. I think the average household income is about $26,000 or $27,000 for the average student using that program in Florida. And DeSantis only won by a little bit, and so the Wall Street Journal had an article recently saying that that the school choice parents were the ones that tipped the governor's race and pushed
them over the top for the win. Yep.
Right.
So I think parents become their own special interest group, essentially. I mean, the good kind of special interest group where they're fighting for their own families, right, instead of just a protectionist system.
No, I agree, and I agree with everybody here 100%. But I would also say too, it goes beyond that. Like, there's a lot of people right now who are being pressured by friends, social media, all the rest of it to try to say the right thing. What can they do to help other people because they feel people are in a bad spot, they don't know what to do about it. And I think that one of the things we have to do as advocates, again, I believe conservatives need to reach out to people and say, look, here, our ideas work. Like, you want to talk about what puts someone on a path in life that makes them more likely to have a successful job and family, and that they're less likely to have negative interactions with law enforcement in the first place. Well, education, right? And if we're not out there sharing that message very aggressively right now, it is getting lost in the shuffle of what the media wants to talk about. And they don't want to talk about the fact that there are better outcomes here. And I'm not being conspiratorial, right? Like, this should be, in my mind, page one in every newspaper. It's, again, one of the issues we deal with at No Better Friend, but yet I think it's been such a big part of our focus so far because I see it as foundational. It is foundational. Our whole team sees it that way, where if you get this right, so many other things take care of themselves, include economic growth and prosperity and lack of negative interactions with law enforcement because you're on a different trajectory in life. And here again, in a moment where everybody's casting about or being told that they should do something, well, here's something that's real, it's tangible, and actually does change people's lives for the better. And so therefore, we should be out there telling people, Joe Biden is happy to say that he would shut down schools that have better records of educational attainment for kids that are in disadvantaged situations. Explain to me how that helps America's future. I know that it doesn't. I know that tens of millions of other people right now who don't know what to think about this election would hear that. And if you put these numbers on the screen with it, boy, it kind of recasts the way that you think about these people, and it should.
And I think part of the struggle for a lot of people, I won't put words in anybody's mouth, but I see this from time to time where people say, how can I support teachers because I love teachers, and they love my kids. How can I support them and at the same time support a school choice program that siphons money out of their schools, right? And so we hear that all the time, the siphon money piece. And why do you hate teachers so much? Those things aren't, those are separable, right?
They are.
You can do both at the same time. You can support charter schools, vouchers, homeschool moms, homeschool parents, and also love teachers, right? So go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and again, we've talked about Chris's parents. My kids are in public schools, and we have got great relationships with their teachers. And when we have a problem with the school, we reach out, we talk directly to the superintendent. I could name a couple of superintendents who know us quite well. So we have a situation that works in our family. And I would just argue that, yeah, none of this is anti-teacher in any way, shape, or form. And then likewise, too, follow the numbers. We just talked about it. The numbers that are allocated in Wisconsin for these vouchers are actually about 50% what's allocated to traditional mainline public schools from the state. So no, there is a suite of options here that can be developed, which actually creates the optimal situation for students, for teachers, for families, and various teachers. And I think a bit of what we've allowed in Wisconsin through legislative changes is to give teachers greater freedom to move between districts that make the most sense for them, that give young teachers that are starting their careers out better opportunities to move ahead based on their performance. These are good things for teachers. And it's, again, I very much always am cognizant of separating arguments against just giving teachers unions what they want and what you can actually do to support teachers. Because ultimately, we can both say that teachers want to teach environments where kids are happy and successful. They don't want to go to school every day in a failing school where they're not helping kids. I think we can all, realize that you didn't go into teaching in order to just push paper and watch kids fail. You want kids to succeed. So let's create an environment where teachers are more successful. And that's, again, what we see in school choice programs, in addition to putting ideas and policies and practices into the market that are more likely to make traditional mainline public schools more successful over the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we need to keep repeating that message because it gets lost all too often that school choice, benefits teachers too. I mean, there's about 5 or 6 studies on this that look what happens when you have labor market competition when school choice comes into play. All of them find positive effects on teacher salaries. And why is that? Because, well, with school choice competition, you have stronger incentives to allocate the dollars towards the classroom. Who's in the classroom? The teachers. Right. So their salaries go up when their employers actually have incentives to do a good job. And then also when they have more options for where to go, then their employer again has more incentives to, we better pay them a little more, and we better give them a better work environment so they don't leave. So yeah, I mean, competition in the market for goods and services helps customers. Competition in the labor market helps employees. This shouldn't be all that hard, but here we go. We have a lot of people saying the opposite. So it's one of those things that you have to keep knocking down. There's so many myths in the school choice debate. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Right. And that's politics, and I'd also say that's too. It really does. Again, this is not tinfoil hat stuff at this point. I think we're all pretty clear where the media falls in the political line, and it is what it is in this moment in our nation's history. But like their unwillingness, reporters, right? And I've talked to reporters about this. I'm not going to name names here, but they know who they are. And if you're not willing to just simply print the stats as they are and be more honest about what levels of attainment are occurring where you're not helping anybody. You're not whatever crusade you're on to help whatever political party you think you're helping. You're not helping people. And I think that, if the media is not willing to be honest about what some of these results have been, again, in a moment where we're being inundated with negative news about people in disadvantaged situations, here again, let's be honest about what some of those solutions really can be without pointing fingers at each other, castigating people or anything like it. We can say these are policy solutions that really do work, and there's numbers behind it now for years of data. And we should just be realistic about that.
Mm-hmm. So we're coming up against our hour. We've just got a few minutes left. But Corey, did you have something you wanted to jump on?
I just wanted to point out that I'm glad he called out the media for a little bit, because there is a lot of sources. It's not all of the media outlets do this, but they'll say things that are just outright false about the voucher evidence, and they'll just say things that aren't true about education funding over time. We've seen a lot of that lately. So I think it's really important for individuals, not just organizations, to call out the media when they get things wrong, especially when it comes to school choice, because this is such an important issue. At Educational Freedom Institute, one of our big things is correcting these false statements that go around, because it's so often, and there's just like false statements that are repeated so often that people just don't question it if you don't actually put the data right in front of them. So
this right there, that was your opportunity, Corey. You almost missed it to plug. If any of our viewers or listeners have stories that have verifiably false info in them, or you have a suspicion, send them to us, because we want to look into that stuff, and because it's important that we get it right, because until we can change the narrative in the minds of the people, we asked you earlier about how it's going on the ground in Milwaukee, and people don't know. We gotta, that's your goal there, right? Is inform people. So, and that's what we're up to over here, just on a different specific issue. So anyone that has any of those leads for us, we want to make sure that people are getting the right information, accurate information.
So sorry, the reason we're having a podcast here is to get around the media. Here at No Better Friend Corps, Corey, you participated in our Right Idea podcast. Mm-hmm. We talked about the politics of school choice. We heard from school choice parents. I participated in that. My daughter did. Mm-hmm. And we get around some of those myths, and we brought up those myths in our podcast, and I talked about in the Right Idea podcast, I talked about, that they say choice schools pick our parent. I mean, they pick their kids, that somehow they're recruiting 4-year-olds who are somehow,
How big was the paycheck, Chris? How much did you get from the school?
I didn't get that. So it's like they're picking, some grand wizard kid who's 4 years old. It's like you say, hey, we want to put them in our school to pad our, our test numbers and make us look good. It's totally false. Everybody know, once you put, if you fill out a voucher, you send it to a school. If more people apply, you go into a lottery, and whoever gets under the lottery gets picked. They're not picking students, and so we dispels a lot of those myths. There you go, the Right Idea podcast. You can subscribe. And like I said, Corey was featured on there too. We had a great podcast on there, and so and we break down a lot of those myths. So I really, and Corey, I really appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate your Twitter, what you do. I follow you on Twitter a lot, and you're very active, which is great. And I love that it's just almost all education stuff. So it is pretty good. You're dispelling myths, and I hope people are watching and who are probably not on our side fully and probably coming closer to our side. So thank you.
Yeah, and I do want to tell everybody that they should go check out that Right Idea podcast, because you guys had a lot of people. It wasn't just me on the podcast dispelling a ton of myths in the school choice debate. And one of the best places to look in Wisconsin, which is to a lot of people the birthplace of the modern voucher program in the United States. So more people should go check that out, and everybody should go check out No Better Friend Corps' website in general and their work. And any closing thoughts from you guys on? I mean, we've had a great discussion so far, but we are coming up to almost an hour now. But if you guys have any concluding statements for our listeners, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, I'll just say I hope your listeners. I think when we're taking this information in, the best way to advance the school choice movement is to talk to your neighbors, people who probably aren't educated. Here in Milwaukee, we got a lot. Everybody knows what school choice is in Milwaukee for the most part, but in some states they probably don't have any idea what it means, what it is, how it affects, what it is. And so I would encourage your viewers, anybody watching, to just go out there and talk to parents. Talk to their neighbors, talk to family about school choice, and dispel a lot of these myths. Because the more people we get on our side, that's going to be much better for students. It's going to be, a lot better for children like mine. So I would encourage people out there and spread the word. So,
awesome. I just urge everyone to remember that to be confident in sharing these ideas, to know that we're on the sides of kids and family, and we have every reason to get out there and share that with people and not back down when others try to deny statistics and attainment reality. We need to push back and say, look, we're here on the side of families. We've looked at the numbers. We know that this works better. And by the way, we know that people don't have time to wait for policy promises that might happen in a decade or two. That is way too late for kids that are being born today, let alone ones that are already 5, 6, 8, 10, 15 years old. Time matters here. And if you really do want to see other people succeed, school choice programs are one policy solution that helps to, again, create the platform that puts people on the right trajectory.
Nice.
Cool. Thank you so much. And where should listeners check out your work? Should they just go to the new No Better Friend Corps website? What's the best website? And I'll put it in the comments.
Oh, absolutely. So for the Right Idea podcast, you can head over to Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the cool place you get podcasts. And I don't know those places because but I think those are the core ones. Am I missing any? I think that's like the core. And then head on over to our Twitter handle and No Better Friend Corps, or our Facebook page, No Better Friend Corps. You'll find us there very easily. And our website, NoBetterFriendCorps.com. Please come visit us. And we'd love to, again, drop us a note. We'll put you on our email list, and we'll keep you up to date with what we're doing around the state.
Cool. I just put links to your website, podcast, and the Twitter. So everybody go follow them on Twitter. It's at NBFCORP, No Better Friend Corps. NBFCORP. CORP. Make sure you guys follow them on Twitter. And again, this is another episode of the Educational Freedom Institute podcast with co-hosts Matthew Nielsen and myself, Corey DeAngelis. And I just want to thank our special guests again, Kevin Nicholson and Chris Lawrence, both from No Better Friend Corps. Thank you so much, and everyone have a great week.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us. Take care.